All right, and we're going to welcome to Old School now Elena Colombe, a wellness specialist and the head of curriculum at Gavetti.
Longevity.
Jevity. Oh, that makes more
Yes.
sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
longevity,
longevity.
Jevity, yeah.
All right, cool. So, out of the gate, like you're going to be speaking today and you'll be going over a lot of other things, but I wanted to kind of get to the blood and guts, right? Which, no pun intended, maybe pun intended.
Maybe pun intended. That's a good one. I
Okay,
like it.
so you do biomarker blood work.
Yes.
And I want to know why. Why would we
Yeah.
need biomarker blood work?
So there's this fun concept called preventative healthcare. I know, wild concept. Many of us have heard of it. We maybe think it's a myth. And unfortunately, traditional Western medicine is not preventative, it's reactive. And so the whole purpose of doing regular blood work, our members specifically do over 100 biomarkers every 6 months. And what we do is a functional blood chemistry analysis against the not the Western ranges, but the functional ranges, because those are going to show sort of the early warning signs of dysfunction and disease before it actually turns into disease.
Okay.
So, the Western ranges are there to help diagnose and assess for a disease state. They're not there to help you prevent getting to that point. And so a lot of times biomarkers, especially in our blood work, they will start to shift before you even start to feel symptoms of things, before you start to feel the dysregulation. So I tell people a lot of times, by the time you feel bad, it's been going on under the hood for months or years. And
it may be too late.
and usually at that point, you're already feeling miserable. You're already wondering, why can't you get answers? And the other flip side of that coin is that, are you looking at enough of your body systems together in one single snapshot, or are you looking at things in a silo? I'll give an example of a member that I'm working with. Wonderful man, but 37-year-old male. And I know we're talking a lot about women's hormones, so he's a perfect example of this. Came to us and wanted to get some support and had concerns with his white blood cell count and fatigue, and year over year getting blood work, and he presented all this lab work where all they're checking is his white blood cell count.
Right.
So we pull obviously a much bigger picture, and we're able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Turns out at some point he had Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh, wow.
And so we got that information. We're like, hey, let's go get this additional test and start figuring out the pieces of the puzzle, right? Okay. And then, hey, now we know that you have this sort of immune suppression due to this viral load that you carried at some point. Let's do a GI map stool test, because we do some specialty testing as well beyond the biomarkers, right? Well, we want to look at, if you need something more, what else do you need? The blood can help us tell that. We were able to see his blood work and go, hey, based on your health history, based on what you're telling me, based on what we're seeing, we need to look one layer deeper.
Sure.
And sure enough, got his GI map stool test back, and his immune system is just completely tanked.
He has none, right?
Completely tanked. He doesn't have one.
Right.
But this is a common story for everybody, right? Men and women of all ages, which is why we really advocate for the regular biomarkers, and then not just getting the blood work, but actually having somebody present it to you in a way that you can understand.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much information, and if you've ever seen a blood work report,
right,
it's like, what am I looking at?
I go to a naturopath, and so we look at it differently than typical, right? Mm-hmm. But I do understand that a lot of the normal ranges, if you will, in blood work has to do with the average population, not the average healthy population.
Correct.
So that's maniacal to me.
Yes.
Because, like, to say that I'm okay when maybe I have something because I just happen to fall in a normal range is insane.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. I'm one of these people who, when I've taken personality tests and stuff, I know what they're trying to get at or what the answer they want for, like, a job or whatever. I kind of cheat or whatever. So when you guys ask ahead of time, I, for example, just full transparency, believe it or not, before Tracy and I even started talking about me doing the podcast here, have a kit steaming its way towards me from Josh Axe, Dr. Axe.
Oh, okay.
He does a biomarker thing. He has you poke your finger and do the blood, whatever. Anyway, they wanted me to answer like several pages of questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
And in my brain, and I'm not thinking any of you are deceitful or trying to sell me supplements, but there is a little bit of an end game when you have deficiencies, is I feel like I don't want to tell you what my brain is assessing about my body and my health, because aren't the biomarkers supposed to show us that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, for example, let's talk about one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
Perimenopause.
Okay. I'm 63.
So
I'm like
you're
5 years,
postmenopause,
10
yes.
years on the other side, but okay.
You can have sometimes dysfunction in how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, even if the lab markers are in a quote-unquote optimal range. And that's why having a conversation with somebody is so important.
Okay.
Because women, especially in their sort of mid-30s to early 40s when perimenopause can start to set in, the first sign isn't imbalance in the labs.
Right.
It's, I don't feel like myself.
Right. There's emotional and mental
Yes.
and physical,
So
right? Yeah.
you have to pair the numbers with somebody as a person, because as much as we do need the biomarkers to tell us and give us those early warning signs and to help guide the boat, so to speak, right, help drive the roadmap, you have to go based on how someone's feeling. So I'll use myself as an example. I just got my 6-month comparative blood work done.
Okay.
And it looks worse than it did in April.
Oh, no.
But I feel fine.
So, yeah.
However,
isn't that how it is? Like with cancer or what have you? Any of those things, yeah.
But I had COVID last month.
Oh, kind
so
of threw things
the
off.
biomarkers are not reflective of how I feel. So if I just went off of what the numbers were telling me, it would completely change how we make the correct interventions based on my 6-month blood work. Because for all intents and purposes, my blood work should have improved.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But because I'm...
And so
I
now
was
you
sick,
could be frustrated and think, okay,
Yes.
these supplements or these deficiencies or
Exactly.
these whatever. So what's interesting with that too is like sometimes, I guess the way you guys analyze it, that might be my next question,
Yeah.
is when you go to a conventional doctor
Mm-hmm.
and they get the blood work, and if you go in telling them, I feel X, Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it feels like they stop at me telling them X, Y, or Z,
Right.
and then just automatically prescribe or whatever off of that.
Yeah.
So you guys take the combination. You're not just trusting that
Right.
I understand 100% of what's happening to me, but I do understand when I'm tired or when
Exactly.
stuff's okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what is different about biomarker blood work and the regular like chem panels or whatever I might get when I go to SonoraQuest? Like
So-
what are you guys looking for in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and to clarify, a biomarker is just any basic piece of information about your body,
Okay.
a stat that you can check over and over again and sort of compare it before and after and track trends.
Okay.
So the serum labs that you would get from a medical provider through just like, you know, your regular LabCorp, SonoraQuest, what have you, the difference there is you're going to be much more limited to what you can look at, because they have to play by the rules of insurance.
Right.
This is sometimes why seeing a naturopath doctor is a benefit, because they don't have to play by insurance. They can do realistically whatever they want. They don't have to have a diagnosis code or a CPT code in order to pull a serum lab for something.
Right.
Because here's the catch-22. I'll give an example of TPO, thyroid antibodies.
Okay.
Is one of the levels that we use to assess or practitioners, because I'm not a medical diagnostic person, but TPO is something that you can use to assess if somebody is maybe at risk of developing Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which I actually do have, and that's the autoimmune thyroid dysfunction,
Right.
which sometimes hides.
Sure.
Right? Okay.
Sure.
Now,
Well, plus the way we're created.
exactly.
Like one organ picks up for the others and kind of can give a false positive or a false
there
negative,
might be
right?
there might
Right.
be there might be some compensatory things going on within the system. So now, when you go to the doctor and you get a thyroid lab done, they're gonna usually pull TSH and T4, which is
Standard.
great,
Right.
standard. But
Don't
if you
tell us.
ask them to draw a free T3 or a reverse T3 or a TPO, they're gonna tell you something along the lines of, it's not medically necessary.
Right.
But
Or here's a $700 bill
Yes,
per one,
yes.
which drives you to the point where you're going to say, okay, I'll go with the basic,
right,
right?
yes. And now here's the catch-22. In order to catch either dysfunction or disease before it really turns into something that's hurting you, you have to look at some of those numbers to know where you're going and to know, do we stop here or do we need to keep looking? But if you also need the lab to get the diagnosis, but then you're telling me it's not medically necessary, so many times, and so many people that I've worked with, breaks my heart. They get told that they have to get worse before their doctor will order
Consider
that
it medically.
additional. Exactly. And so there's the catch-22. So it's the limitations on what you can look at, and they're usually only going to look at one body system and a limited number of those things. Our biomarkers are drawing our longevity panel covers much more in-depth items. So we do order TPO as a standard on our thyroid panel. It's actually something we added after I came on board with Longevity. I was like, hi, excuse me, can we get this? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And so we threw it on our longevity panel because I know from my personal health experience that a lot of people have no idea that they have this thyroid inflammation due to an antibody response unless you look at the numbers. Right? And that can shift depending on what you go through in life. Okay, another example is you go to the doctor and they check your fasted glucose and your A1C.
Right.
But
Not your insulin.
how often are they checking your fasted insulin? Okay, because your glucose and A1C will shift, but insulin is a compensatory hormone that is much harder to move once it starts to dysregulate.
Right.
And that's going to tell you the true story, right? Another example is you get your lipids pulled, okay? Your cholesterol, your LDL, your HDL, your triglycerides. But who's looking at your apolipoproteins?
Right.
Which are actually the number of particles that are carrying those lipids through your bloodstream. And apolipoprotein B, which I'm actually going to talk about today, is one that carries your non-HDL cholesterols, and that's going to be the more dangerous plaque-forming cholesterol floating through your system, and that can be elevated. It doesn't always relate directly to the serum LDL numbers, or the non-HDLs, right?
And a lot of women, I have excessively low cholesterol, but the ratio good to bad is keeping me where it's not unhealthy, it's just low. And they say a lot of young ladies who, well, I'm not young anymore, but a lot of women who were like, carry stress or something. And because of some abuse and some things that happened in my past, I've had kind of a low level rev or anxiety most of my life. So I'm having to have people who are willing to look past the norm or past the basic stuff. So this sounds awesome.
Or iron, for example, right? You mentioned stress. We do pull iron and ferritin. Okay, ferritin are your iron stores. And a lot of women will sometimes show decent iron levels, but unless you check the ferritin, right, which is your stores of iron.
Are you utilizing it?
Or are you depleting it so fast because of stress?
Right.
Or are you storing it because of inflammation or disease? So again, from my most recent labs, my iron and ferritin levels were a little bit concerning, but you put into mind that I just went through a virus experience. I just had a viral load on my body, still dealing with some of the inflammation on a cellular level. That's going to skew some of those numbers, but you have to look at the numbers and then take into context the person. And so that's also the difference too between what you can get sometimes from your conventional doctor versus what you can get from us. And also putting this, if you put our longevity panel together cash, it runs about $1,500 on its own if you just ordered all the levels by themselves through like SnoraQuest or LabCorp.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's just...
And basic screenings are covered even if you have crappy insurance like I do with a high deductible, but you go back to, you can't go past the basic stuff.
You can't go past the basic stuff, which is really where that's
the rubber meets the road.
That's, exactly.
So just briefly, because I know I need to let you go and then bring on our next speaker. So this is a membership-driven situation.
Yes, we do.
There's like a monthly or annual fee, and then you check every 6 months. Is that how it goes?
So it's either an annual or every 6 months. So biannual or annual membership. And we actually have 3 tiers because we want to give people sort of a broad scope of options. So our lowest membership tier is our Longevity Light membership, and it is your blood work every 6 months plus a personalized longevity blueprint that includes not just the supplement recommendations, because we understand that you can take all the supplements that you want in the world, but you can't build a house on a foundation of sand. We include nutrition recommendations because we understand that food-based nutrient repletion is really helpful. There's a lot of things you can do with nutrition to help move the needle on your biomarkers that people just need a little guidance on. We make other lifestyle recommendations in terms of exercise and movement guidelines that are tied to your biomarkers and your goals, right? So that intake form is really important that we do with our members. I know, but it is a very valid question.
I won't cheat on it, but I just, and it's a shame. And this is not speaking to you or anyone in particular, but you do feel sometimes like there's such an inundation of stuff out there. And like, if I start telling you my situation, does that suddenly mean, oh, well, then you must be, without even looking at anything else, you must be deficient in magnesium and D and this and that. So we're just going to load you up on supplements. Well,
Right.
I love the
We
idea,
like to
and
take
you've
the
been able to
guesswork out
kind
of
of
it.
dispel that myth here
Yeah.
that you guys do both. So
Yeah.
this is awesome. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I looked up your website, and I may be hopping on board. We'll see. But yeah, this was great. It was fun to have you here.
Well, yeah, it was wonderful talking with you too. And everybody, please, if you do follow us on Instagram, GoJevity, and my Instagram is at elena.m.fit. And I'm super excited to be here today and talk with everybody. But just excited to let people in on some of the behind-the-scenes information that we should know about our bodies, but nobody ever takes the time to tell us.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure all the contact information goes out with the podcast.
Thank you so much, Michele.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you.